podcasts over at WildGamesProductions.com and D20Radio.com.
I'm Chuck Norris, and I approve this game.
Welcome to the Roll for Initiative podcast.
Roll for Initiative podcast, volume number 3, issue number 115. DM Vince sitting alongside DM Nick.
I'm back.
Where'd you go?
To the bathroom? No.
Oh, well, that was quick then.
Camping. Yes, camping.
Oh, you went camping. Okay.
Yes, more on that later.
Ooh, okay. I can't wait to hear. So this week we got a special guest sitting in with us, coming live. Well, taped at the point you guys listen to it. The Web Warlock, you may know him as Tim Brannan. How you doing, Tim?
Very good. Thanks for having me, guys.
And if you're not familiar with Tim, he has been on the web for ever. Since the web started, Tim's been there putting stuff on the web as the Web Warlock. I remember him back from the AOL days. So
yeah.
Anyway, Tim's going to talk a little bit about himself now, Tim. So we're going to put you on the podium and the spotlight's on you.
Great.
Tell us a little bit about
you were on the web when Al Gore invented the internet, Tim.
Yeah, something like that. That's right.
That's wonderful. Thanks. Help me find Man Bear later. Man Bear Pig.
Yeah. Now go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, that's probably going back. That's actually probably going back to the old back when the MPGN had the all the listservs for all of the Dungeons and Dragons products.
Yep.
So I was really active on Ravenloft L and Mystara L, and I'd poke around on Forgotten Realms list, which I just was called Realms, just to remind them how they were doing everything wrong. I wasn't a big Realms fan back then, having grown up with Greyhawk.
Yay, Greyhawk!
Yep, got to stick true to my roots. So yeah, did all that, was on there. Got my first website up and started throwing stuff out on the net for back when everybody was always worried that TSR would shut you down, send the dreaded cease and desist there. I used to talk. What was it? The one site, Morris's site, was it? No, I don't remember off the top of my head. There were a lot of almost gonzo websites back then that were really underground, and you had to get a special password so that you could get the Great Net, the Great Net class netbook or something like that, or the spell book.
That's right. Yeah.
Now, of course, people just give away stuff all over the place, and nobody cares. But
well, because there's no $R around there taking everything down. So
that's right. Yeah, I guess that is one of the things we tend to forget about these days. Where with what I say it's kind of the OGL, but it heaven forbid I say something decent about Wizards of the Coast, but I'm going to anyway. Is that they're like, yeah, you want to put something up? Great, go ahead, do it. Oh, hey, you want some graphics? Here's a whole bunch of them you can use and put on your website yourself. Just link back to us, and we'll be cool about it. And we were all like, really? You're not going to sue us or anything? This isn't a trap, is it? No, really.
It's a trap!
Yeah, exactly.
Admiral Akbar steps in.
Go back to Star Wars.
We'll just change the rule set on you every 4 or 5 years, but that's okay. You can still do stuff. But yeah, it used to be pretty different back in those early days, in the way back days of the 90s.
I know. I had my own stuff on AOL that got pulled down by the $R. So
yeah.
And Lorraine Williams was still a part of that early mid 90s, right?
Yeah, she was still part of
TSR. She was.
Yeah.
Yes, the Wicked Witch of the West.
Mm-hmm.
But we're only going to talk about good witches today, or something like that, I guess.
Well, we can talk about
maybe witches. Some bad witches.
Well, the bad witches are good too.
So we invited Tim on the show today because we're going to be focusing a little bit on witches and warlocks, even though warlock is not really a term for witch. But, some people just use it anyway. So Tim can explain a little bit more about that since he's the Web Warlock himself. So that sounds really well, the Web Warlock. So, whatever.
Exactly. Yeah, I was explaining earlier, and actually I was going to talk about it. That's what I used to be known as online all the time.
Yep.
Because I have this vain attempt I had of keeping my sort of web persona and my real academic persona separate, because I thought, oh, well, if I'm going up for tenure and they see all this stuff I'm doing online, it may, come back and bite me in the ass. And I'm like, eh. And then right around, I guess, I was doing some digging on some old posts I'd made on, like I said, well, the old listservs. Right around 2001, apparently, is when I stopped caring about that. And I was like, whatever. If they figure it out, they figure it out.
I don't blame you, Alec. Who knows back then, putting up D&D stuff, oh, you're evil, so,
Yes, we can't have that amongst our academic intelligentsia.
Yeah, exactly. Well, for me, it was more along the lines of, really, this is what you're spending your free time doing? Shouldn't you be doing research all the time? It's like, yeah, I do research all the time. It's like, I don't want to do it all the time.
I was called hobbies.
Yeah, well, I was a stats professor back then over at, a major grant fulfilling university. That they may or may not want me to talk about, but I don't care really. So yeah, I just did that, and then after a while, I was like, I kind of want people to know me for what I'm doing. And that was also around the same time I started. Well, we were talking about that's about the same time I started working on the Buffy game.
Yes.
And I'm like, well, I want people who are familiar with this set of work to know me with this other set of work as well. So yeah, I'll just put it all together.
You definitely have to take some time, Tim, and put your old stuff back on your blog, because there were some good little gems you put up in the past. So.
Oh yeah, my old website, which was actually called The Other Side, the same as my blog now, had got hit by some hackers.
Oh.
Probably right around 2013, and then I was struggling to keep ahead of them, but I was not as successful as I'd hoped. So eventually, there was like from 2000. I said 2013. I meant 2003.
Oh, okay.
And from there to 2005, there was I had nothing online whatsoever. And then that's when I decided to put my blog back up. So I've been slowly going through my back store of things, because I've been writing stuff and keeping it on hard drives or floppy disk or whatever, since I was in college in the late 80s. Wow. And I just didn't think anybody would ever want to look at it. So every so often I'll dig through the archives and think, well, that doesn't suck half as bad as I thought it did. Maybe I'll put that up too. But believe me, most of it isn't going to see the light of day.
So you've written for the Buffy game. What other stuff have you done?
Excuse me. I was doing a lot of work for Eden back in the early part of 2000. So I wrote their D20 Liber Mysterious book. That was their monster book. I did some of the things for that. So in addition to writing a monster, I was sort of their OGL watchdog to make sure they couldn't do anything that they weren't supposed to do, because everybody was still very touchy about what you could or could not do with the OGL.
Yeah, I remember those.
And
everybody was kind of like, does this seem okay?
Yeah, well, and some of the stuff some of the stuff we get away with now as a matter of course, like Ostric was a big deal on the OGL list. With people saying, "Oh, I'm not going to touch that thing with a 10-foot pole." Well, nowadays everybody. Ostric has obviously been a success because I've got these nice, shiny new first edition books that WotC put together. So they obviously thought it was working fine. Yeah, they were nice too. My Unearthed Arcana book is now not falling apart.
Yeah, me too.
I guess I got lucky.
So,
Mine's still good condition. So
mine's in decent shape, but this one's obviously better. And like I mentioned before, my kids have just started in a first edition game.
Oh, that's
so
nice.
Now my first edition books get a lot more use. They've gotten more use in the last year than they got the 10 years prior. So having these new ones out, it's like, well, here, use these, and then these other ones that I have that are 30 years old, I'll just keep over here so that they don't get destroyed. But so I worked with Eden on Liber Mysterious, their D20 monster book, which led to working with them on Buffy. So I worked on the Buffy game. I wrote quite a bit of the Slayer's Handbook, and I worked a little bit on Monster Smackdown.
Oh, cool!
and Monster Smackdown was on. And actually, the one of the Kendra, the Slayer in Training package, came from one of the characters that I was playing doing playtests. A character by the name of Senan. She was this Indian girl living in England. And I thought, oh, well, she was a Slayer in Training. It was based off of a character that a friend of mine had created. And, I used Senan for a while. So she actually became the first Slayer in Training before there was ever such a thing on TV, which I was pretty happy about. So her stats live on forever now in the book. And did that, worked with some people on the Magic Box. And about that time, I was getting really burned out on Buffy.
Wow, that Magic Box is the most hardest book to find out of that whole entire series.
And mine I have signed by Amber Benson.
Oh, wow.
So she signed it right on her picture there on the front. Well, which actually led to, after working on that, I got really burned out on Buffy, both, as a game and as a show. And I started working with Amber Benson and Chris Golden on the Ghosts of Albion game, which I wrote. And Ghost, I have to say, is my baby. I love Ghosts of Albion. I really do. I worked harder on that game than I think I ever have worked on anything.
Just a quick note, Tim. Anyone who's not familiar with Amber Benson, if you did watch the Buffy series, she was Tara on that series.
That's right.
Just in case someone was like, "Who's Amber?" So.
Yeah, so they Amber Benson and Chris Golden were in England, and they did this BBC animation Ghosts of Albion, and there were 2 episodes of that, and there was a short story, and then they did some novels, and we've got the Game of the World. I guess the cheating shorthand way of describing it is Victorian age Buffy. Excuse me. So it does take place in the Victorian age. Uses the exact same system, and I remember I was showing Amber the first draft of the game. She had been in Chicago to do a convention, so I took her out to her very first Chicago deep dish pizza ever.
Yay!
Excuse me, sorry, I got a bit of a cold here. So we went out and I showed her the game, and she was very excited about the fact that she could play Buffy in her own world. Because she said if she was going to play, that's the character she'd want to play. I'm like, but Tamara is so much cooler, and I showed her. She goes, well, yeah, Tamara is cooler. Tamara, for those of you who haven't seen the BBC, she's the main character, and she's the one who inherits all this magic. So I worked a lot on that, and that was an absolute blast. I got to work with Amber. I got to work with Chris. They were really cool, and that was a lot of fun.
Did you do any work with James Marsters or no?
No, I didn't. To be honest with you, he's an interesting guy. I never actually gave him much credit.
Really?
To be honest with you, yeah. I was never a Spike fan. Well, obviously, I mean, I'm a fan of the Witches, so it was for me. It was Willow and Tara.
Yeah.
So, but after that, it's like it wasn't until after the show got done, and I was listening to the Dresden Files books on tape, whereas James Marsters is the one narrating them all.
Oh, I didn't know he narrated the books.
I'll be honest with you, he's fantastic. He is absolutely fantastic narrator of these, and he's he was living here in Chicago. During the 80s, he was part of Second City and all that other stuff. So he actually knows Chicago better than he knows Chicago better than Jim Butcher does.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, because Butcher, Butcher's like, I was going through the first book and I'm thinking to myself, no, we don't call that the JFK. We call it the Kennedy. But because, he lives in St. Louis where they've got a highway there that's called the JFK. Well, here it's not. Anyway, it's a Chicago thing, and we kind of get bent out of shape when you do things wrong. We don't have a conceal and carry law here, despite what it says in the Dresden Files books. They're still fighting about that in Springfield. But once I get past all that, I'm like, oh, these are cool. These are awesome. And of course, I have to admit, it was James Marsters who really got me hooked into the books because he's such a good actor, really. And I never gave him credit in Buffy, but it wasn't until afterwards that I gave him, the credit that he's actually due.
Excellent job in Buffy and Angel, and an excellent job in Smallville as well.
You know, I only saw one episode of him in Smallville, to be honest with you, but I thought he was actually very good in that. Torchwood, though. He was in Torchwood.
Yeah, very good there too.
He was very good. Very different kind of character.
So we let Tim talk long enough, so let him have a chance to breathe here for a second.
Sure.
Let's over and get into the show a little bit. Nick, tell us a little bit what's going on with the stars. What's going on there?
Oh, yeah, we got some more stars here. So, just let you know, you get onto iTunes and you can look us up on the iTunes store. Type in the search for Roll for Initiative, and just go right to reviews, and we'll read as many of our reviews as we can. We got one new one. I really like this one. This is by Dave the Average. Dave the Average here. And he gives us 5 stars. It says, so much better than shop class. So, and you'll see what I mean by this. It says, and Dave says, it was 1981, and I was utterly failing to make a knife holder in wood shop, mostly because I was afraid of the saws. Another less than skilled craftsman reached into his bag and drew out a red box with a dragon on the cover, and shop class suddenly became awesome. Flash forward more years than I can count, and for my midlife nerd moment, I started collecting all the first edition books, then came modules, and then I wonder if I could if anyone was still playing the game. While searching for information, I found the RFI podcast. I was hooked 5 minutes into the first cast. Here are a bunch of guys sitting around talking old school AD&D like it was more than just nostalgia or something from their childhood. They were talking about it like grown up nerds, but still grown-ups. The RFI DMs take AD&D and make it live and breathe again without trying to modernize it or shoehorn it into the later iterations.
Yeah.
Blending classic TSR material with contemporary methods of play, RFI brings AD&D into the 21st century. Their interviews with the masters of the game and game masters strike the right tone between keeping their guests on topic and letting them sit back and just tell stories about the early days of gaming. The hosts are articulate, funny, and immediately knowledgeable on their subject matter. Not a mean trick when it comes to gaming where the fans will leap on an error like the last Mountain Dew. If you're an old school gamer returning to the fold, a young gamer who wonders what the graybeards are on about, or just curious about role-playing in general, the RFI podcast is a fantastic place to turn. Grab your graph paper and mechanical pencil and sit down to the DMs. They promise no TPKs in this podcast. He says, on a personal note, I said when I started buying the old books as a collector, I'd no interest in playing again. After listening to RFI podcast, I can't stop hearing the dice tumbling in my head. Maybe time to fill my book bag with the rules and hit the table in the basement. Yeah. Well, that's awesome. I love when we get reviews like that, not just about the show, but just getting people back in the gaming. And that just, I think that just shows, I guess we're doing our job in a way. When people stumble upon it and they're like, wow, I want to start playing again because these guys are excited about it too. So thanks a lot, Dave the Average. And you're not average, dude.
No, you're cool.
Cut above the rest.
Dave the Cool.
Dave the Cool.
Yeah, I like that. Dave the Cool.
Yes.
Well, at least it's better than some other names we've come up with. So
yeah.
So anyway, thanks. Yeah, the Cool. We're going to call him just the Cool to be short.
Cool Dave.
There you go. Cool. You can go right to iTunes and give us a review, and we'll read it on the air, of course, as usual. So, Nick, tell us what happened. You went camping last time we had the show.
Yeah, I went camping for Mother's Day, and my wife wanted to go camping that weekend, so we did, and had a real good time.
I told my wife about that. She's like, his wife wanted to go where?
It's like, it's her way to get away from it all, just relax, and of course, I did my awesome ribs for everybody.
I keep missing those, Nick. Every time I come towards Gen Con, you're supposed to make them, and I forget to ask you.
I know. I'll give you the recipe. It's really easy. Or you come by, I'll make them.
Okay.
But, had a real good, enjoyable time. And in that time, we also did my friend Jeff, his campaign. Where it's kind of, I don't know if I mentioned this before, but it's kind of like it's a real cool take on, like, I guess you'd call it Game of Thrones kind of thing. going on. So it's really a humanocentric kind of world. There's a lot of intrigue and plot twists and stuff going on. So that's been going on. That's pretty cool. And that's pretty much it.
Cool. Yeah, my game was this weekend finally.
Yay!
And we picked up. We had the group was narrowed down to about 5 players. Had kicked one person out for doing 2 no-shows and signing up to the games. Another person went on an internship for about another half a year, and then another person just didn't show, so we just kind of wrote him off. And then all of a sudden we're about to play, and 2 players show up to my game this week from the other group that we have in our little system going on. Remember I spoke how we have 2 groups now, Nick?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So they showed up and they're like, "Can we join your group?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure." So they walked out of the other group because there was a discrepancy with the other DM.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, and I've asked them. They said it was cool to talk about it. So basically, what happened is they were using a charm person spell, and let me talk about this 1 second. The player who was using it hadn't played in probably 20 years. He said he was just coming back to the game, which is cool.
Right.
And the other guy who followed along with him has never played role-playing games or this edition at all. So he just kind of followed along. So they used Charm Person on a bugbear and another creature.
Okay.
And they said to the DM, "Is it okay if we do this like this?" And he said, yeah, sure. So I guess the DM, after them playing it and using these 2 creatures as attack dogs and everything and kind of breaking everything in the adventure,
Yeah.
he read it during the week and decided, no. So he came back this past weekend with this whole written-out speech about how players should know the rules, and it's not his job to know the rules. And
Whoa.
yeah,
Really?
yeah. It's not his job to know the rules, and they shouldn't be trying to put something past him. And for that, he's not being malicious, but he's going to punish the players by not giving them any experience and taking everything away from them from last adventure, including the creatures. And top on that, Nick, the Charm Person spell was no longer allowed in his world or adventures anymore.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Really?
He had a whole thing written out and he read to the group.
That.
Wow.
Wow. Hello, ego.
Yeah, and this is also the same DM in the same group that took the Paladin's powers away because the Paladin slit the throat of a hobgoblin they captured. And the hobgoblin wouldn't answer any questions, so instead of just letting him live, he killed it.
Okay.
He said that was a dishonorable kill, and now you lost all your powers.
Oh my gosh. Wow. I don't know who this guy is, but
He doesn't really...
it sounds like a lot of just DM fiat and big ego and what I say goes. And he can't admit when he made a mistake.
Yeah, and they came over and they were just like, "Can we play?" And I was like, "Yeah." And they told me what happened. I was like, "Oh, wow, yeah." You won't find any of that here.
You know, that's funny that you mentioned that, though, because there was a thread somewhere. I think it was on Dragon's Foot. It's like, and I think it's about like if a DM, if you make a mistake, do you fess up to it? And
Yeah.
yes, you do. You know, a DM makes a mistake, and players make mistakes too. You know, what you said, the one guy hasn't played for 20 years, other guy not at all. Mm-hmm. And you know what? You make mistakes. Just all he had to do was say, "Hey, okay, this is what the rule is. You know, I should have known it. You guys should have known it. Maybe read up a little more. Okay, we'll move on." Enough said. Done and done.
Yeah,
you know?
he took everything away from them. Okay, he should have just said, "Listen, I screwed up. So let's just retcon it that the creatures ran away in the night. I'm sorry, I made a mistake. It's what I thought you were using Charm Monster, which should have been used, not Charm Person. We read it wrong. Moving forward, let's just move on with this." And they probably would have just been like, "Oh, okay, cool."
Right, but no, he had to write out a whole thing. And
A whole thing, a whole speech he had to read and tell them how the game is supposed to be played and what adventurers are not out to pick up. See, apparently these guys were in the group were taking weapons from monsters or orcs or whatever, collecting them and selling them for gold or
okay,
silver,
what's the problem with that?
because they were using it to gain XP as well,
Okay.
which he has a problem with apparently as well. So I said, then just don't give that gold for XP then, or XP for gold.
Yeah.
Because he's like, "Oh, you're not supposed to be doing that. Adventurers are out to find adventure, and they're not out to fight and kill everything. Then what's the point of being an adventurer then?"
The whole thing, I mean, the basics is this: go into a dungeon, kill monster, take stuff, rinse, repeat.
Yeah, magic users are out to find knowledge, not go blast everything with every spell they have. Yeah, they're out to find knowledge, but they're out to...
And also blast the crap out of everything that gets in their way, too.
Blast things that get in their way to see how well their magic works. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of a problem going on over there.
Yeah, that's too bad. I it makes kind of... I don't know to say it makes me sad. It makes me a little... irritated when you hear about guys, DMs like that who are just, they don't fess up to their mistakes, and if someone makes a mistake as far as a player, you just kind of let it roll off and move on. Just.
And the thing that really ticked me off is that there was a brand new guy there just playing for like the second time in his life.
Yeah.
And he gets this whole big spiel from the little Napoleon Complex guy.
Right, and he's probably thinking, is this normal? Is this what normally happens?
Yeah, and then the guy, I'm thinking to myself, this poor guy's going to walk away. I'm never coming back. Screw this game. Came to my group. He rolled up a thief for his first time. He played the character excellent. I mean, this guy played better than I've seen veterans play. So.
Well, they luckily this guy stayed on, the new player, and hopefully they'll, I'm sure they're going to have a good time in your group. Sure
and the other guy who came over as well, hadn't played in 20 years. He did a wonderful job as well, so I couldn't see where there was a problem except with the DM himself. So, so that's that. Well, what are we going to do? All right, let's head into Sage Advice.
Sage Advice.
Okay, Sage Advice. Guess what, Nick?
Let me think. We got another voicemail from DM Kojo?
Man, you're doing... what is it, like 10 shows in a row now?
Yeah, he's kind of set a trend. I appreciate it. I think we all do.
Let's take a mute and listen to DM Kojo.
Hey guys, DM Kojo here. Just was listening to the latest episode and your discussion of critical hits. I'd call in and just give my perspective on critical hits, since it is a house rule and everybody seems to do it a different way. Just my 2 cents on it. The way I handle it is natural 20 automatically scores max damage for whatever the weapon is. Then I do the confirming or backing the critical hit that you guys seem to hate. My reasoning for that is that a natural 20 comes up 5% of the time. And that just seems, considering the types of bad things that can happen, I just don't think that, I think that's too frequent to be able to lop off a limb or automatically decapitate somebody or something like that. So I do have my players then roll another 20 if they get a 16 to 20, so basically an additional 25% chance. Then they actually get the full effect of the critical hit. And then I roll on the good hits and bad misses table from Dragon 39, and depending on weapon type and such. And that what they get on that table is what they get. So, just my take on it. Fumbles, same way. A 1 is not an automatic fumble necessarily. They have to then roll again. If it's a 1 to a 5, then the fumble, I roll on the fumble table. So that's how I handle it. Lots of ways to handle it, I know. And, obviously I'll screw it the way you want. But good work. Keep up the good work, and that's it for now. See ya.
Well, what do you think, Nick?
Hey, if that works for him, that's great. Not much for me. I try to keep it as simple as possible. I don't want to refer to too many charts and stuff. Yeah. I think probably because of my experience with Hackmaster with the critical hits and fumbles tables are very complex. So when it came to my AD&D game, I just keep it as simple as possible. It's like natural 20, double damage. I basically, have them roll the damage dice twice. So
Yeah.
that's how I do it. And as far as like when him saying that 5% is too much, I hate to do this, but put in historical accuracy into a fantasy game. I know that's crazy and all, but looking at, like, for example, medieval warfare, there was a lot of limbs lost and lots of lost hands and legs and what have you. It probably occurred more than 5% of the time when you're talking about actual, like, armed combat. I mean, yeah, lots of decapitations, lots of lost limbs. So it was probably even more than 5%.
Lots of mass hysteria, cats and
yes,
dogs. Sorry.
cats and dogs living together, mass hysteria.
Yeah.
But that's okay. I mean, if that's what DM Kojo likes and that's what he wants to use in the game, by all means, use it. I mean, that's cool.
Definitely, we don't want to tell DM Kojo what to do because he'll get mad at us again. So
yeah, I don't want to say no to the guy. Hey, that's cool.
Anyway, thanks DM Kojo as always. Give us a call anytime. We love listening to your voicemails. 570-865-4210, the hotline.
The hotline.
Where Nick is standing by.
No, he's not.
Oh, don't.
I have Cobalt standing by this week.
How about Christopher Walken standing by?
No, Christopher is out. He's gone not so.
Okay, so we got. Okay, Christopher, go away.
Hey!
We got 2 emails coming in going to rfistaff@gmail.com. The first one comes from Jeff T, who is actually from my group. We call him OJ, the original Jeff, because we have 2 Jeffs in our group, so he's OJ.
Okay.
Hello, RFI hosts. I recently received a copy of Lathan's Gold from a good friend on my birthday. Looking at this closer, I realized that this was not only a cool module, but was a solo adventure as well. Maybe this would be a good topic for one of your podcasts. I find myself wanting to play a lot more than once every couple of weeks, and these solo modules may be what I'm looking for when my group is not meeting. What other solo adventures would you guys recommend? Thank you for what you do, and may you always roll 20s, Jeff T. That was me. I gave him Latham's Gold, like a mint copy and sealed copy for Latham's Gold.
Nice.
Yeah, for his birthday. I grabbed him a whole bunch of like Roll Aid stuff and modules for his birthday.
Like solo adventures?
I know there was a lot in Basic. There was a lot. I'm looking right now.
Well, there was Midnight at Dagger Alley for AD&D.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's available for download on the Classics D&D Classics website. But I remember that one. There was Maze of the Ridley Minotaur. I remember from Basic. So
yeah, there was. I know there was. Was it X Solo? Then there was XL Solo or something.
Mm-hmm.
There was a bunch, and there was also one for. Was there one for the B series? No, there was no B series.
It was B Solo.
Yeah, that's it. Okay.
I think that was Midnight at Dagger Alley. Not Midnight at Dagger Alley, but Maze of the Ridley Minotaur.
Quick browse through the Dungeon Index for Dungeon magazines gives us only two, surprisingly, solo adventures for first edition. But 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 for second edition.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think Wizards Challenge, Clerics Challenge, those are all the Challenge series. I believe were all solos.
Yeah, they were.
And there are a few new solo adventures out there out in the OSR community that have been out recently. I don't remember any off the top of my head, but if I remember at Pace Setter Games,
okay.
One fellow does Pace Setter.
Uh-huh.
I believe he's got one solo adventure. It's called Grave of the Green Flame.
Mm-hmm.
And that one's available. So, just to give you an idea what's out there.
I'm actually looking at the Dungeon Index, and remember Vince Garcia from the last one we looked at for Dungeon?
Yeah.
He actually wrote one of the solos.
Oh, okay, cool.
Issue number 9, The Dingy's Ring. So, first one, and the other one is The Scepter of the Underworld, but that's for 12th level solo. That's a pretty big solo.
Wow, yeah. So yeah, there's a few out there. You could just do a quick search on on the web, and like I said, Pacesetter's got that one. I think there's a few other by some other publishers. I can't quite. I think Expedious Retreat Press might have some too. So I'm looking up on their website, on their books.
And of course, there's also those books that Jason told us a long time ago about, like the Lone Wolf books, I think they were.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to get those books up here. I can't remember the names of them offhand.
Yeah, you could check out Expeditious Retreat Press, or like I said, Pacesetter Games. I guess we can put those in the show notes, and you can look them up, see what they have for maybe some new solo adventures out there. And I'm sure there's a bunch of free stuff out there too if you go to certain websites.
Osric didn't have their own, did they? No.
Not that I recall. I don't know.
I was wondering. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I can't seem to find the books right now. Amazon's loading up real slow for me. So, anyway, there you have it.
Well, how about our warlock here? He could fix the internet now, or
he could fix the
our
internet.
web warlock can fix it.
Exactly.
We'll fix it.
What do you have
Go
to say,
do
Tim? You have any suggestions for him?
I'm sorry.
For solo advententures.
Yeah, there we go. I'm back off of mute now.
Oh, okay. You were on mute the whole time. Okay.
That's what we were worried about.
So do you have any idea for any solo adventures for Jeff who wrote it?
The only one I remember even remotely using, and I'll be honest with you, I didn't care for solo adventures, but I remember the B solo one.
Yeah.
And there was the one which came, I don't remember if that was B solo one or one of the expert ones, came with the sort of red piece of cellophane that you had to cut.
Yeah, that was Midnight at Dagger Alley.
Yeah.
That was for AD&D.
Yeah, I thought, what's the difference? And the whole time I was doing it, I kept thinking to myself, what's the difference between this and one of those choose your own quest adventure books? Or what was the one game that was heavy into doing the solo adventures?
Tunnels and Trolls, I think, was really into
Tunnels and Trolls had quite a few, and there were a couple other games back in the 80s. I know White Dwarf used to cover quite a few of them.
Mm-hmm.
Those books are actually, other than the Lone Wolf book, there is the Destiny Quest books by Michael J. Ward, and there's the Fabled Lands book as well by Jamie Thompson. Those are pretty good solo type adventure books. They're more of a choose your own adventure, but it's still kind of cool, those books.
I remember those. Those are a great little thing just to have around with you.
Yeah.
It's like, well, I can't play D&D, but I got this paperback that's almost really close to it.
It's almost as good, yeah.
Almost as good.
Almost.
Get your gaming fix in a way.
All right, so thanks, Jeff. See you in the group. We got another email coming from DM Turco. He's just commenting on our last show that we did about monsters and monster classes, playing those.
Mm-hmm.
Just listen to your show about monsters and humanoids as PCs. He wanted to write in and say, my girlfriend plays a half-human, half-squirrel in an otherwise normal campaign world. It's the only way I can get her to agree to play. As far as stats and abilities, I just rolled it up as an elven thief and used that as a basis for her character. DM Turco. So there you go. There's another one. Something else you can use. Half-squirrel.
Half-human, half-squirrel.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Why not?
Whatever works, man.
It's like the Marvel Comics Squirrel Girl.
There you go.
There you go. Bingo. You hit it. Nailhead hit it.
Have you ever used that in your game, Tim, playing monsters as races, or?
Monsters as I let my son have back when we were doing some more 3.0. I let him roll up a kobold because he loved dragons and he thought kobolds were like little humanoid dragons. Mm-hmm. So he had this kobold named Horky that he used. And I thought, you know what? I'll just play him as a psychotic I'll just let him play him as a psychotic halfling, and it worked out fine.
Cool.
But that's about as close as I've ever got.
I'm Kobold. I'm going to use that.
Yeah. So we did that, and I have to admit I'm fairly, when it comes to races, I generally stick with human myself.
Yeah, me as well. Anyway, so cool. Thanks, DM Turco. RFIstaff@gmail.com, 570-865-4210. That's the hotline where we have things standing by to answer your... We'll have shadows. Yeah, that's it. A shadow is going to answer the phone. So, there you go. So let's roll into the vault. The Blackstone's vault now. He's back.
Blackstone's vault is back.
By popular demand. Go ahead, Blackstone.
Blackstone's vault.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another long-awaited episode of Blackstone's Vault. So sorry I've been away for so long, but this is your host, Blackstone. And in this podcast episode, I will be reviewing a new adventure just came out in the past few years. And in some of the future shows, I'm going to be doing mostly adventures that have been done in the recent past, just in the past few years. Stuff that really caught my eye that you can either modify to AD&D or whatever D&D game you're playing, and use them in a current campaign. So some new stuff compared to the old stuff that I reviewed, which is enjoyable, but this is going to be mostly new adventures, new modules that are out there. And the first new module that I'm going to review is something that really caught my eye, and I just had to do a review on this, and this is module ASE1, the Anomalous Subsurface Environment. And this is by Patrick Wetmore, through, I guess you would call his publishing company, Henchman Abuse. And it was published back in 2011, so just in the past few years. And this is part of a series, the ASE series. And the this first of the series is for levels 1 to 2. And about the adventure, very, very unique. It is set on Earth, our Earth, but a cataclysm happened. And 4,000 years later, the world has been reborn. No one knows what happened with this cataclysm. Could have been a nuclear war, could have been a comet hitting the Earth, whatever it was. But 4,000 years later, the Earth is different and new. Yes, there are dwarves. Yes, there are halflings. There are elves, but there are other races out there. And you have savagery, sorcery, and super science. Yes, folks, if you are familiar with the old cartoon series Thundarr the Barbarian, if you are familiar with Jack Vance's Dying Earth series, if you dig that post-apocalyptic dark future kind of sorcery and super science kind of thing, this is really up your alley. And I'm really, really excited about this. Now, as far as NPCs, there's just too numerous to mention. I think it's really easy to start. Let's talk about the actual mini campaign that this anomalous subsurface environment encompasses. What you have is what is called the Land of 1,000 Towers. Now, there is one city called the City of Denethix. And this City of Denethix, like other cities, are ruled by mad wizards. The other cities, other towns might be ruled by wizards that have slavery, dark cults. Some of the people are used for food. So this is pretty dark future stuff, folks. Not for the timid and weak of heart. So the City of Denethix is ruled by a relatively benevolent wizard who hasn't been seen in a very long time. But the City of Denethix is pretty well detailed in the book. As I said, there are the Street of Temples. There's the Street of Upright Living, the Street of Worthy Servitude. Now, there's a good map, a fairly decent map with all little buildings and everything, and it has just a few areas that are pointed out on the map of where the main temples are, where certain palaces are, where the river is. Everything else needs to be detailed by the dungeon master, and that's okay, because there's enough here to really whet your appetite. Now, further on about the city is you have the different factions inside the city. You have the Exalted and Chosen Brethren, which is basically the city council. You have the Unyielding Fist, which are the enforcers of the law. You have the Star Courts, which is obviously the judicial system. You have the Society of the Luminous Spark, which are a group of secretive abolitionists who are trying to fight for freedom for all slaves. And you also have one called the Church of Starry Wisdom, which is a church devoted to the crawling chaos himself, Nyarlathotep. Yes, there are Cthulhuid-type creatures in this campaign. So if you like that sort of stuff, you go right at it. It's really, really cool in that respect. Now, talking about like the Church of Starry Wisdom, I want to talk a brief mention about religion in this campaign. For clerics, this is going to be a lot different than other ones. The gods aren't what they seem, and I'm just going to leave it at that. I don't want to give away too much. I think it would be much more enjoyable if you read about it yourself. You get this. I highly recommend that. But there's also some cult known as the Cult of Science. And these are cult worshippers who literally worship at the altar of science. They worship science as a literal god. They believe science isn't just a word, it's a name of a god. So that's very, very interesting in this campaign. Now let's get into the outlying areas outside of the city of Denethix. You have as the aforementioned Land of 1,000 Towers, you have a place called the Worthless North, where your barbarian tribes come out of. You have the Forbidden Vale, which I quote, has rumors of crystalline trees and multi-dimensional apes that stalk between the glittering trunks. You also have a place called the Ceratopian Plains, where various types of herd animals like cattle, bison, protoceratops, and triceratops roam. So yes, there are dinosaurs in this campaign world. So that's just a few ideas on some of the places that are outside in the area, the region of the Land of 1,000 Towers. And what I like is there's just brief, maybe 1 or 2 paragraphs detailing each area. And it's really up to the DM, again, to flesh it out. But there's enough here to really get your imagination going. And I think that's really good. In many respects, there was kind of like in the writing is a very World of Greyhawk folio setting kind of vibe here when I read through this. So really enjoyed in that respect. Now, going beyond that, I want to talk about some of the races. You have dwarves, elves, humans, and halflings. Particularly about the dwarves, elves, and humans, they're a little bit, or dwarves, elves, and halflings, they're a little bit different than your normal fantasy campaign setting of these demi-humans. They have what's not really infravision, it's called wide spectrum vision, which they can look at something called sick light, which is really gamma rays, and they could identify what is known as sick rocks, which is plutonium or uranium, but they call it sick rock, and it gives off the sick light, so it makes people sick. Basically get radiation poisoning. Another thing are the goblins, and the goblins are more of a degenerate creature than in other fantasy campaign settings, because they reproduce the goblins in this world reproduce by having like a spore or growth come off their body. They stick it somewhere and they smear like feces and other excrement along the thing, and it grows, and it just becomes another goblin. So and the goblins are ruled by hive minds, which are, what I understand, are like giant brains that came from a faraway planet. So, yeah, the goblins are a lot different than other places. So, yeah, that's just a little bit about the races of the world, that the anomalous subsurface environment, which bears in mind, yes, there I am getting to the actual dungeon itself, the anomalous subsurface environment, which is in itself huge. It is a very big level. The first level is more than enough to get your players satisfied. It is a mega dungeon, by all means.
And this mega dungeon, how it first came about was when thousands of years ago, when this cataclysm happened. Before that, there was a mining company that found this weird place that they dubbed the anomalous subsurface environment. And they were able to conduct experiments in this place that they couldn't do anyplace else. And they dug out caverns and tunnels and passages, and they added to this place, and eventually the place got locked down. People got stuck there. Other creatures were in there over the thousands of years. And there's a nice little introductory way on how the adventuring party is to find a map to get to is essentially the gatehouse on how to get to the anomalous subsurface environment. So they go to a lair of the Mokhtars. Mokhtars are one of the races which it's really in this game world a version of the Moks, like Ukla the Mok from Thundar the Barbarian fame. They're kind of like that. They kind of look like lion men basically, but they're called Mokhtars. They can't talk. They speak in growls, grunts, howls, and what have you, just like Ukla did. So you go to the Mokhtar lair. You might have to fight them. You find the map to go to Mount Rendon, where the gatehouse and then eventually the anomalous subsurface environment is. So you go to the gatehouse area. There are your standard green slimes. There are a few other wandering monsters that will be in, like a bear. But there's also some other new things, like as far as new monsters, like automatons. And there's lesser and greater automatons. They're basically robots, in a way. You also have radioactive sturges. Yeah, sturges that are radioactive, yellow molds. Another new monster is a dust ghost. So, and by the way, there are lots of new monsters in this adventure. And when you're going through this, basically, this gatehouse area is like you're going through a laboratory in a way. You're going through these halls that are made of these new materials like argonium, which is a kind of a plastic material infused with another type of material called protonium, which protonium is a type of metal that could only be produced in the anomalous subsurface environment. So you have these two different materials, and various armors and weapons can be produced from these things, and they have a bonus value associated with them. And they also radiate magic when you create things with them. So you're going through all these different offices. You eventually get to an access shaft so you can get to the lower levels. And that's when you get to the entrance of the dungeon. And the entrance of the dungeon is rather interesting because it's basically an elevator. And once you take the elevator down, what happens on the outside, and the players don't know this, but outside, automated machinery has begun excavating entrances to the deeper levels of the dungeon. And giant searchlights are rising from the overturned soil to illuminate the sky. So when they go into the dungeon, it's been announced to the whole world. Now, the interesting thing about this dungeon is that not only is it huge and well laid out, but there are factions within inside this dungeon that you might have to, that the players may be able to play off against each other. Like there's in the first level here, you have 3 different factions. You have the Screechmen, which are basically degenerate humans that all they do is yell and screech really high because they're blind, and that's how they do their echolocation with this screeching. You have goblins, and you also have Morlocks. If you're familiar with the old movie and the book, The Time Machine, yes, these are those Morlocks. So you go into these various, and it's just so big. It's so huge. I am really amazed with it, and very well laid out. So you're going against the Screechmen. You're going against a whole bunch of new monsters, Jawheads, which are really nasty. They're black four-legged creature that have basically 4 jaws. And they are like something out of a person's nice nightmare. I'm sorry, excuse me, 6-legged. And 4 couldn't be enough. So you have those creatures here. There's so much stuff to the first level. I just can't even begin to tell you all the different new and innovative things that are in the first level. I think the best way to describe this to you is that there are some interesting traps. There are some interesting new monsters. There are some interesting and fascinating new magic items and riddles. There's just a little bit of everything in here that I can't even begin to describe in just one review. But suffice to say, this is something I think would be a really great kickoff to a whole new and innovative campaign setting. For a DM who likes myself, who's been craving for something new and original in a campaign world, and I think this really fits the bill. Again, just to kind of give an idea, like some of the new monsters, you have the automatons, you have greater and lesser ones. You also have blade zombies, which are zombies that have basically dagger blades sticking out of their hands and their eyes. You have corpse jellies, which are jellies which a jelly-type creature which attaches itself to skeletons. There are the dust ghosts, giant earwigs, goblin spiders. You have the Mokhtar, as I told you before. Then there's this one I thought was really interesting, the Sasquatchtron, which is a Bigfoot with a crab claw arm and a bulbous head that looks like it has like electronics in it. So it's really interesting, and just some really cool stuff in here, in my opinion. So I'm kind of stumbling over myself because I think this is such a fascinating adventure, and I cannot wait to start another campaign with this. The only thing I guess I think that wouldn't be so good for anybody is if you don't like anything beyond what we consider quote unquote normal D&D. Now this adventure and the subsequent adventures have been written for a Labyrinth Lord. So converting it over to D&D or AD&D will not be much of a problem. I did maybe like 2 pages of notes to convert it over to Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. So that'll be a real piece of cake. So in my opinion, this is probably the coolest thing I have seen in years that's come out of the old school Renaissance. As far as where you can find it on Lulu. You can print it on either print on demand or PDF. So you have both ways that you can get this, or you can go to henchmanabuse.blogspot.com and go there and see if there's any other updates. Now, what's next after this is ASE 2-3. There's the second and third levels of the anomalous subsurface environment. And from what I can tell, there are going to be more. I think there's going to be at least 6, maybe 7 levels after it's all said and done. And AS 2-3 is out. It just came out just in the past few months. So that'll be my next review. So that was my review on ASE 1, Anomalous Subsurface Environment, again by Patrick Wetmore for the ASE series, and it's for first and second level characters. And I hope you guys go out and buy this, either get the printed copy or get the PDF copy. I am just so blown away by this. If you want to have the Dying Earth series kind of come to life with some Thundar the Barbarian in there, thrown in there with some lasers, and yes, there are laser weapons, and there are 6 guns, and there are machine guns in this, but it's all well balanced and well put into the whole campaign world. I just think this is probably the most innovative and fun things that's come out of the old school Renaissance since it really started. So again, this is Blackstone signing off, and may all your hits be crits.
Oh, what'd you guys think of that?
Stunk.
Oh, well, hey.
No. Awesome to hear.
I'm telling you, that adventure mini campaign, that whole thing, awesome stuff. Really is. That anomalous subsurface environment. Gotta look it up. It's still some of the coolest stuff I've ever seen out there.
So, Nick, I've been noticing that the Blackstone check and the Nick check have been going to the same house. So
I don't know what you're talking about.
And both are signed in the same handwriting, Nick. What's going on there?
That's a lie.
Okay. Blackstone's your brother, right? Yeah. So what do we got?
Yes, he's my evil twin.
Yeah. So what do we got in Table Manners this week?
All right. In Table Manners this week, we are going to talk about the witch. She's a witch.
Yay. We're mostly going to be focusing on the Rolaids Witches Supplement 747, which is made by Mayfair. Yay.
Yep. Here in Chicago.
Yeah.
Yep.
Over by deer.
Henceforth, we have the Master of Witches, or Warlocks, or whatever you want
Something
to call
like that.
More witches! Oh.
Yeah, more witches, that's right. First, we'll get out of the way. Witch is a general term for male and female, and warlock, obviously, is really kind of just calling someone a liar or someone that breaks promises.
Mm-hmm.
How it got turned into the term for using a male witch, I don't know that. Maybe you can help us with that, Tim.
The term warlock came from the old Scottish word verloga, and it just sort of got confabulated with witch as being a male witch, though, like you said, a male witch is actually a witch. I have a sort of a schizophrenic viewpoint on warlock. Sometimes I like using it, other times I don't. I did a second edition netbook for witches back when I was, web warlock, and I was like, oh no, don't do it. It's like insulting. You never say that. But then I've got a new book coming up where I'm actually making a difference between a witch and a warlock, and really the difference is mechanically speaking, do you use wisdom as your primary attribute or do you use intelligence?
Right.
Where, a warlock is kind of a witch that has stolen all their ideas and then gone off to do their own thing. Without, necessarily, quote unquote, the baggage of the religious aspects. And that way I'm sort of having my cake and eating it too.
Nice.
So I still get to do both. And, I've had a couple of books out before about it, and then I always get these emails from people. It's like, oh, but I want to play a warlock. I'm like, all right, when you do your character sheet, instead of writing witch, write warlock, and you'll be good. And then if you want to play him evil, the part where it says alignment, put evil, and then you're great. But, I've gotten that enough times where I thought, all right, fine, I'll put it in there and we'll see. And then, of course, I'll do that, and somebody will say, oh, but that's actually not the real term for a male witch. Yeah, I know, but that's okay. I don't necessarily believe that I have to keep the same opinion on these things all the time. I've been doing this for a little bit, I guess.
Yeah.
So I'm allowed to change my mind every so often.
Yeah, I remember when I was younger playing the game and those Warlock movies came out. I was like, oh, I want to be like the Warlock guy. So I was searching, looking for Warlock stuff, and then there was always witch.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, I guess, whatever. Apparently they brought the term in, I guess, in fourth edition, right? It was official, maybe? They brought it in?
There's an official Warlock class in fourth edition.
Yeah, that's it, okay.
And it's actually not a bad class. They had brought in later in the third edition, there was a warlock class, and the whole idea was this is somebody who, sells off pieces of their soul so that they can get power, which is a neat idea, something you never would have seen, under the second edition AD&D.
Oh, no.
Regime. No, they completely would never have done that. And the class was very popular. I guess. I mean, I don't ever remember playing it in 3rd edition myself. So when they brought it in for 4th, it was one of the core classes.
Yeah.
You know, it was in the very first, player's handbook.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a neat class. They have a witch now too, which is what amounts to a subclass of the wizard, which I'm not thrilled about, but dating all the way back to the those player's handbook supplements, like the complete wizard's handbook for 2nd edition. There was a witch class in that as well.
Well,
and it was just a it was a kit, what they used to call it back then, for the 2nd edition wizard.
Yeah, that's back when they were writing anything under the sun and publishing it back then.
Yes, I do recall that.
Of course, I bought it. I mean, we complain that they do this stuff, but yet I was right there. Oh yeah, I gotta have that.
Like rats at a feeder bar,
Exactly.
So, reading through this book, we'll go over some just overall impressions of this book. I know, Tim, you've had this book and probably slept under your pillow or something at one point, but I have to say, reading through this book, I don't know if I really liked it because it was kind of stereotypical for a lot of things I've noticed. I know it's not supposed to be, but it's like they took a stereotypical point of view and just went, that's what it is.
Well, yeah. Now, I generally speaking, I liked Mayfair. I liked their products. I mean, they were responsible for 2nd edition Chill, which I absolutely adore, the game Chill. And when this came out, I remember grabbing it right away.
I bet.
And I see what you're saying about being stereotypical. It's very stereotypical for what the late 80s, early 90s for what what we're thinking of. I mean, we just got past the 70s, the cult revival. So nowadays, I look at it, and I'm like, well, maybe it's not stereotypes. Maybe this just it's just ideas writ large, so that they can try to include everything.
Right.
I give them credit for doing different traditions.
Yes.
Yeah, that I thought was kind of cool how they split up in the different chapters like that, with just starting with the I guess the ancient or classical and kind of working its way
right. Up. Exactly, and I thought that was cool because you do any sort of, even the most cursory research on witches throughout the ages, and you realize, well, we're using one word to really describe just a whole bunch of different things. And maybe some of them, we would classically call wizards, and maybe something is, would fit the more of the AD&D mold of cleric. But I think they did a pretty decent job with this. I wasn't thrilled with the Darini as being a witch tradition myself.
Yeah,
that's toward the end.
I thought that was odd too, because I think some of us recall. I know one of my favorite issues of Dragon. I think it was Dragon issue 83. It was all Psionics class, and the Darini are like Psionicists. So I was I thought it was kind of odd that they threw the Darini here. Like, really, as witches? I did really, maybe it was my previous Dragon magazine knowledge. I just,
it seemed real off to me, and I had just actually the one and only original D&D game, using the honest to goodness little brown books, was a Darini game where we used the old psionics from Eldritch Wizardry, and we were all Darini characters, and we all had psionics. So I mean, I had this character who was 14 years old, and he ended up with a strength of 18, but an intelligence of like 12 or something like that. So 12 is actually not that bad, but when you think about, at the time we said, oh, well, he's big, dumb, and can psionic blast people all the time, which was, a game that we were trying to make more into this is a mental game. This is, we're going to do courtly intrigue and things like that. I'm like, great, I got a guy whose best attributes are busting people over the head with a sword. But, for me, that really colored how I saw what Darini should be, even if it isn't what they really were in Catherine Kurtz's books. And then I got this. I'm like, well, that seems like it's really in left field.
Yeah,
everything else I found. Yeah, everything else I kind of got the feel for. I mean, the classical, okay, that's cool. Voodoo, more of a stretch, but I get it. They threw in the Wicca ones in there, which I thought was
the
probably
neo-pagan stuff.
Yeah, which I thought was probably skirting a little too close to, Gardarian sort of witchcraft. But it's like, okay, that's great. I don't see them in the D&D games much, and of course, people have probably said the exact same thing about the stuff I've written though too. So I wouldn't be surprised by that. But yeah, I mean, I enjoyed this. I still have my copy. And I go to it every so often where I think, oh, well, if I ever go back to the well to get some more ideas and think, maybe I'll take, Julie Wyvern Spur, one of the NPCs they have in here, and restat her under one of my systems just to see what she'd look like. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's how many times I've gone through this. I have the NPCs more or less memorized, which is actually kind of sad if you think about it.
I thought the classical entry was very interesting. Mm-hmm. How they wrote it up as far as where the tradition, allegedly came from. When we're talking probably like in the chapter, let everybody know when they're talking about like classical witches, they're talking like ancient Greek, Assyrian, Babylonian kind of that part of the classical era. I thought they did at least from my knowledge, I thought they did a pretty decent job with it. Kind of, especially with the Greek part when they're talking about the mystery schools,
right?
That was a very good part of that when you're talking about, especially ancient Greece and how the mystery cults, how they were, a pretty important part of Greek society,
right?
And then it got to this World of Fairy thing. I thought that was kind of odd. Now they kind of jumped to the 19th century here and talk about these type of the powers and the idea witches? Of what witches were from 19th century. I thought that was a little weird.
The medieval witches you're talking about, Nick?
Well, that was kind of before the medieval one. Because they're talking about fairy magic.
Oh, yeah, those ones, yeah.
Yeah, that fairy magic section I thought was kind of odd.
That's definitely some more of the there was a book that was out around the same time called The Fairy Cult in Western Europe.
Right.
And they obviously, were very influenced by that, which is fine. I mean, I see what they were trying to do, but, I mean, it sort of removes it from where it got started and sort of putting it back into a D&D framework. Granted, though, it's no weirder than trying to put druids in a medieval society.
Right.
And we got that, in the first player's handbook. So,
right.
Yeah.
Now, I thought they did a fairly decent job too on the Chapter 4 medieval witches section.
Yeah,
I was like okay.
That with they use Artemis or Diana.
The Dianic cults.
And that's it. In a way, when you're talking about the ancient tradition, it kind of goes into the medieval era. I think it's kind of interesting how it is kind of almost an evolution, if you will, from the ancient from the classical period up into the medieval period, and how it just kind of evolved from those cults, especially if you're talking like in real world sense, when you're talking basically late Roman era up into the early medieval period where things were really chaotic in Europe and you had a mishmash of all different beliefs going on. I mean, you had early Christianity, you had the old Roman gods, you also had local gods in whatever region they are in Europe, and this was a part of that. All those Dianic cults that were adopted from Greece and they were brought into Roman society. So I thought they did a pretty good job on that.
I did enjoy the some of the spells because each tradition has their own set of spells. I mean, some of them you've seen before, but there's some custom ones. But like this one, like the Wish of Diana, really interesting how they took that. It's kind of like a limited wish spell, and you only have 6 words or less to compose the spell. Otherwise, it doesn't work.
Right.
And even if it doesn't make sense to the player, you still have to say it in the 6 words, and it could come true or it could work. And what is it, 1d6 days, was it? Yeah, 1d6 days, it'll become apparent. But every
and
time...
it was a pretty low-level spell, too, at that.
I
Right.
believe it's, first? Second level. Second level
Yeah,
spell.
second level, I think.
Skill level is 3, Wish of Diana.
Actually,
Okay.
the second.
Skill 2. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
They moved.
But either way, I mean, it's not you're not talking about a 7th level ultra reality illusionist spell or a 9th level wish spell.
Right.
I mean, this is something that's pretty simple, but
Yeah.
a lot of restrictions. So
Okay, there's a
Yeah,
book
it was-
error. So is it second or third?
Well, they have it on the list as skill 2, but they show the actual spell as skill 3, so...
Yeah.
I have it. Yeah.
That's not the only mistake in the spell.
I like
so.
the little. Yeah, well, it was the 90s.
Yeah, just kind of a side note, I was actually kind of surprised to see that the copyright was 1990. I didn't know that they were producing Roll Light stuff that late.
Yeah.
I thought they got hit with the lawsuit a little bit before then.
They did get hit with the lawsuit. That was back in what was that? 85, 86?
Yeah.
But they were still producing this. They were still going on. I mean, I think that's when they started putting that, not authorized, or the big banner that's on the front cover of this particular book, where it says, no trademark or for use with Advanced Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah, game
Right.
is not approved by TSR.
Yeah, I mean, nowadays, I mean, obviously we know a little bit more about how some of this stuff works.
Right.
Or maybe I just know more because I'm older. Maybe, Rolaids could have kept on going with these perfectly legally, and TSR would not have had a leg to stand on.
Well, yeah, they really didn't, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, of course, right around the time this Witches book came out, that's also the same time that their big, box set and all their books on demons came out.
Yeah.
And they were
that's right.
already pre-punched to put in your, monstrous compendium 3-ring binders, which I thought was pretty cool at the time. Even though reading them, you realize, these are really sort of written from the point of view of first edition, not so much second edition.
Yeah, Mayfair was a big first edition type company. They didn't move on with second edition.
Yeah. So, and I mean, even these rules, at this point in time, 1990, we were pretty much into the beginning of the second edition rules, but
Yep.
these read more like first edition.
And
definitely.
they were just going to start with the splat books, I think, for the core classes too, right at that time.
Yeah.
So what else do we have in this book that we like? Let's see here. Other than these wonderful... What do you think about the elemental type witch that they had, Nick?
Those were kind of interesting. I like the elemental witch. I like the idea of, pulling together different sort of elemental powers. The trouble I had with it is like, okay, so you got an elemental witch, and maybe this is just me. I always try to think of it as what if I'm a a human being in this time trying to figure out what do I want to be when I grow up, and if I want to be, how do I know what the difference between an elemental witch is and a druid? Or how do I know the difference between what an elemental witch is and an elementalist wizard? I guess it would be, was I accepted to the right school or things like that? And I think in terms of playability is, what was the difference? How did I know which one of these, would it make more sense to have one elementalist class then that made more sense and then combined all the powers of, all the above or something? Or maybe I was putting too much thought in it. To me, it seemed like it was a bit redundant to some things we had already seen.
I also felt the same.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also felt the same way about the voodoo stuff. I mean, in a way, I'm like, wait, don't we have the witch doctor anyway, kind of outlined in the DMG? But I mean, I guess what you could look at that chapter is maybe an expansion on that. You could borrow some stuff from it. I guess that would be cool.
Just think you can use it maybe expand upon the shaman for some of the classes. I would use it for that at least, a voodoo class. That's what it kind of reminds me of.
Well, with me with the voodoo in particular, I like the voodoo class, or excuse me, the voodoo tradition. But I couldn't help but thinking, it's like, well, the trouble with this is that voodoo in the real world is a very specific thing. And it's a mixture of two different kinds of beliefs. why then is a voodoo tradition part of the witch and saying not part of the cleric?
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, at this point, and that's something I've always struggled with myself. I mean, is one person's witch is another person's cleric. One person's god is another person's demon.
True.
So when you live when you have a world where you've got all this gods and demons and everybody fighting it out, pretty much real time, how do you know what's going on? Why is this person over here a witch, and why is this person over here a cleric, and why is this person over here a wizard? Other than, well, I roll a d4, I roll a d6, and this other person rolls something different. Well, for hit points. Well, okay, that's great, from that point of view, and it's great from the point of view of me wanting to play, but I try to think of these things probably, again, too much in terms of naturalism. How did they occur? What happened? With the Dianic witches, I see it. With even the classical witches, I see it. The Wicca, okay, we're fudging the lines a little bit here. Voodoo, all right, I have to bend some reality to make these things work. I like them though, and I guess at the end of the day, I went with I like it. So I went ahead and I had some voodoo witches even in my own game.
Oh, it's definitely an interesting class to take a look at for an NPC to throw in your game. I don't think I'd let a player use it, though.
No, I don't think I've ever let a player use it either. I mostly the fairy, the classical, witches. I mean, I can see where the fairy work out. I mean, if we
Sure.
You can even say, well, witchcraft was invented by the elves. Oh, okay, well, that's what a fairy tradition is. Okay, then why do we have a classical tradition then? Oh, well, I don't know. Maybe they just happened that way, I guess.
Well, the two things I think we already said this, but I thought, again, I'm looking at it, really stood out to me. It's like, why is it in the book? Where they tried to throw the Golden Dawn stuff in there.
Yeah.
I'm like, why in the modern? And there was like a one on Golden Dawn, which is anybody who isn't familiar with the history of witchcraft and occultism. There was the Golden Dawn lodges, I believe, that were in England. Yeah. And they had that sort of type of quote-unquote witchcraft going on. It was like late 19th century.
Yeah,
right. Maybe in the early 20th century. I thought it was kind of out of place in that book. In the book here.
Did.
I felt like this was more of kind of a Call of Cthulhu kind of thing, and less AD&D.
I was pretty heavy during second edition. I was really heavy into Ravenloft, and that second edition is actually the game I say that I played the least but ran the most. Because I was in college at the time, and I didn't have, anybody I would drag into playing. Usually, guys around the dorm rooms who either had passing knowledge or didn't know anything at all. I was like, all right, well, I'll run. That'd be cool.
Yeah.
So I was the one who was always running things. So I would use the Golden Dawn in Ravenloft because there they work. I mean, obviously, somebody like Aleister Crowley, if he was around today, he would be, he would be a multimedia megastar, and he could act just as evil as he did back then, and people wouldn't even blink an eye. But part of Crowley's, personality was, he's doing all these things, and it's, it's so blasphemous and it's so bad. He was like, honestly, he was Kesha of the 1890s.
Yeah,
a lot of it was just.
It was
he
show.
was really a charlatan.
Exactly, and that's cool and all, and I can see where I could use that. But as a class, okay, what is the Golden Dawn? Well, Golden Dawn is probably closer, to a wizard class. Why is what's to say we can't say the Golden Dawn is not a witch tradition, but more of this is advanced studies at some magic school.
Mm-hmm. I guess. I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say, to translate it in the third edition rules, Golden Dawn would have been a prestige class.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Actually, now I kind of think of it, if anything, if you want to draw anything from that chapter, and maybe on the modern one, if you were going to go with maybe a campaign that was really heavy on wizards, a real like maybe the whole party is like wizards of some variant or another. I think that would be a decent chapter to draw on as far as like how would I run a Wizards Academy? How would I run a
right?
I at least that a good piece of source material, maybe get an idea how to do something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So there we go.
The one thing I got out of the Golden Dawn is that I remember reading this, and I had read Dracula about 3 or 4 years prior, and I remember sort of a passing reference to the the Solomance, or however you pronounce it. And I've got a cold, so I'm probably not pronouncing it right anyway. But it was this school up in the Transylvanian mountains where 13 potential wizards would go up and learn magic from the devil, but the third one of them would have to stay behind, and the other 12 would go out into the world to cause whatever problems. And I thought, now that's a cool idea. Mm-hmm. That's something you could do, and I could retrofit this into something like that. So these are wizards, but they have all this extra, powers too, because they went, to the evil version of Hogwarts. Though we didn't know about Hogwarts back then.
Actually, that's a great game, a great adventure game for like a Buffy game.
Yeah, exactly. So, it just, you've got these 12 wizards that are going around, and like, well, maybe, or if you were the characters, you got 13 characters going to go through. Which one of you is not going to graduate? That could be a whole game in and of itself. Maybe something from Malcolm's Witch Girl's Adventures, taken to a very extreme level. Have you seen that game? I don't know if I'm pulling that one out of thin air.
No, I've never seen that one. No.
One of my friends, he's got a game, Witch Girl's Adventures. But it's kind of like it's based off of some comics that he had done, and it's magic school. You're playing teenagers going to magic school.
Okay.
So it's kind of fun. It's I don't want to say it's necessarily a kid's game, but it's aimed probably more to a kid audience than it is, let's say, Call of Cthulhu is.
Mm-hmm. That'd be kind of cool. Yeah, 13 going. Which one has to do with like them fighting for everything?
Yeah.
Get a whole Hunger Games thing going on.
That's right.
Yeah.
Magical Hunger Games.
There you go. That'd be awesome. I don't know. I was trying to think of a way to get Hunger Games into type of a game type, but I don't think it would really work, honestly. I can't see it happening.
Anytime I see Hunger Games, though, the only thing I can ever think of what would work for the sort of the dystopian world is something along the lines of all flesh must be eaten.
Yeah, true.
Although I'm sure there's other probably better dystopia games out there than that.
Nick, you said you also have pulled out some Dragon magazines as well?
Yeah, I also found that there was a couple of issues of Dragon magazine way back in the day that addressed having the witch now just as an NPC class, and there was the first issue of Dragon magazine number 43. So pretty early on in the Dragon magazine run, there was an article done called The Witch, and I think it's also Invest a Dragon Volume 1.
Yeah.
So you could find that there. But there was also, later on in issue 114, there was The Witch, and basically it revised the one out of Dragon in Dragon Magazine 43. So it just kind of revised it, upgraded it. So I thought, and I think again, it's only an NPC class according to the AD&D rules. Doesn't mean you shouldn't have to keep it that way, but I'm looking at the Witch, even written in these Dragon magazine articles. I can see why it could be just as an NPC class, because it could be pretty darn powerful. Just the different mixes of, you're drawing from like magic users, druids, and clerics from their different spell types, and it makes a rather interesting, and I guess in the hands of a player, pretty darn powerful class.
Yeah, the Dragon 43 one is interesting. I mean, like you said, obviously the class is really powerful compared to, let's say, a similarly leveled druid or wizard. I mean, you get these high secret order spells that only witches know how to use. And you get the ability to use all sorts of poisons and potions and filters and things like that, which I thought was very interesting. I think actually the gem of this particular article is this little sidebar, really, by Tom Moldvay.
Yes,
about
the real witch.
Yeah, what it should be. And I go back and I look at that every so often, thinking, all right, so it's a good breakdown of what he felt a witch should or shouldn't be in a D&D game, given what we know about it today. I mean, I don't remember when this particular issue was out.
I think it was 1980, November 1980.
Okay, so very, very influenced by the Margaret Murray, the witch cult in Western Europe, and the whole idea that there's been this continuous line of unbroken worship, handed down mother to daughter since, the dawn of time, which, anthropologists will say, no, not really, but this was still a very influential book at that point in time. And Tom Mulvey was, a bright guy, and I'm pretty sure he had read the book at that point. And there was enough of what he's talking about here to lead me to believe that he had. But he still, I thought, brought up some very good points about, well, how do you pull this off in a D&D game? What is it that you need to be thinking about? And I'll be honest with you. I had a witch that I rolled up from Dragon 114, and I used her. And every time I pulled her out in a game, my dungeon master would look at me. He's like, "Really? You're bringing her again?" I'm like, "Yes, I am. And you're just gonna have to deal."
And he rolled his eyes. I'm like, "Okay."
Yep.
I'm just looking at the one in Dragon 43. I'm looking, one of the big things that the witch can do: read magic user, druid, and cleric scrolls.
Yep.
That's huge.
Yeah.
So, she could read druid scrolls with no chance of failure, magic user and illusionist scrolls with only a 10% chance of spell failure.
Right.
And
bonus.
she could read cleric scrolls, but only the spells which both cleric and witches may be employed.
Right.
I'm like, wow.
Yeah, well, design-wise, you think, well, there's no witch scrolls listed in the DMG at this point.
Yeah.
So, at the same token, though, that's pretty powerful. You've got the Swiss Army knife of classes, magic using classes right here.
Mm-hmm.
And while we're talking about balance and things like that, and powerful, let's take a look back at the Roll Aids book one more time. And with each tradition, I've noticed that they put in there that the APL or the appeal in there. Did you notice that, guys? The APL for each tradition, like how much they worshipped or did things for their gods. That's the chance that their spells would actually work or function correctly. Mm-hmm. So I think that was kind of a cool way that they did to kind of balance the classes out to make them not too powerful. But I don't know if it was really fair 100%. If a player was playing with it, I don't think it would be kind of fair to a player. Granted, it really wasn't meant for players.
And it would also depend on how the stickiness of the DM too. Yeah. I mean, how much are they going to make the player do this stuff? I mean, half the time we didn't even track encumbrance.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't.
And I'm thinking it's like, my cleric, he prayed last night. Sure he did. He's got that heal spell. All right, he did. So we're good to go. Hey, let's get back to killing monsters.
Yeah, my game is kind of just the cleric says, "Listen, this is how it's going to be every night. My guy prays before his watch or whatever." There, that's
right.
Done. Whatever, done.
I think, though, when I had actually, and I think I've rolled up a character for every witch publication that ever came out and tried them out just to see what they were like. I did go through all of that stuff just to see how onerous it would be on the character, and in truth, it didn't turn out to be that much.
No,
you still ended up with a character class that was pretty powerful. I mean, with the Roll Aids book, the experience points needed are still far less than what you need for the wizard, and you still get 9 spell levels. So you get somebody who's probably closer in advancement to that of a cleric for all the benefits of having a wizard. Well, yeah, it sounds like great. It sounds like a bonus. I mean, eventually, just eyeballing these experience points here, and going back on memory, it does pick up. I think right around 15th level or right around 13th level there, it starts getting to be you have to have more experience points per level than the wizard does at the same level. But at that level, who cares?
Yeah.
I mean, you're already throwing around, 7th level witch spells and are on track to get 8th and 9th. You've already left your cleric friends behind. You can still do some minor healing. You've lost the ability to turn undead, but you've picked up other things to replace that. Mm-hmm. And at that level, who cares if you can turn the undead when you can hit them with a spell and kill them.
Exactly.
Turn undead's cool when you're first level.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Oh yeah, that's why my first class was a cleric.
Fighting
My favorite class.
Yeah. I get to hit things, I get to use spells, and I get to scare away the undead.
What's not
How
to
cool is
like?
that? Yeah, exactly. All those years of watching Hammer horror films taught me that this is the class I need to be.
Mm-hmm.
So what more can we say about witches today?
I don't know. On just a little more on the book. The animistic.
Animalistic, yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, again, another way to pull source material. I didn't really agree with, I thought, well, we already have the shaman
right
in the DMG, but this is a good place to pull some ideas from. At least to expand maybe the spells the shaman can use. And
yeah, that's exactly what I always did with it anyway. I don't think I ever used an animistic witch myself.
Yeah,
I mean, it just seemed too much like a shaman, like you said.
Right, yeah, that's what they basically are. And, we talked about the elemental witches and doing the elemental magic. We talked about their Durinai.
Well, there's one thing we can say about this book is that they have a nice little disclaimer on the back.
Yes.
At the very bottom. Nothing in this book should be construed as representing any current practice or belief.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't remember this book coming out. It's weird. When I saw this, I'm like, oh, wow. This is kind of new to me.
I actually remember when this came out. I was at Castle Perilous in Carbondale, Illinois, had just opened up. And now they're one of the big, game stores down in the area, down there. And I was in college at the time, and I saw this. I'm like, how the hell did I not know something like this was coming out? And I grabbed it, and I was like, oh, this is fantastic. And I still have my copy of that, and of course I still have all my all my Dragon issues.
Right.
They have the witch, and there was even something going all the way back to Dragon issue 5, which the only interesting thing about that witch is it doesn't look all that different than what's in Dragon Magazine 43 or 114. It's the claim, and I don't know how true this is. Somebody out there probably knows the truth of this or not. They claim that they got the submission sent to them anonymously.
For the witch lot? Really?
For the witch. The original version of the witch was sent to them for issue 5 anonymously, and saying that if anybody wants to claim this, just to let them know. And then later Kim Mohan went in and did some editing on it. I don't know if that's true. You gotta go back and look at Dragon issue 5.
Huh,
and I didn't even know. I didn't even know it existed either until the CD archive of Dragon came out, and I saw that and I thought, oh well, that's really interesting. Or it's just a way of them, given the time, saying, well, we didn't write it; somebody sent it to us anonymously.
Yeah, so we don't want to get in trouble by certain groups.
Right, because they still had to be fairly sensitive to that, even in the in the late 70s.
Oh yeah, that's when all that hubbub was going on, late 70s, early 80s. So,
well, I guess maybe Tim Cass would be the person to ask about that. He probably would know.
Possibly,
yeah,
he might know.
So yeah.
Let's see, what else do we know? Well, for second edition, the Complete Wizard's Handbook had a witch class in it.
Yep.
Which actually didn't read all that different than the Dragon Magazine one. Obviously, it was very much influenced by it.
Mhm.
And Judges Guild had a book out too, but I never really cared for their version.
I don't really like a lot of the Judges Guild stuff, so that's just me, my opinion.
Yeah. Oh, we spent a lot of time in the city state of the Invincible Overlord and ended up getting nearly killed all the time. But then again, my dungeon master at the particular time when he was playing, his character was a chaotic evil assassin. So he pretty much ran his games as if he was that character.
Oh, great.
So there were traps everywhere and just insanity abounded. It was, but like I said, it was the early '80s, and we were all like, "Oh yeah, this is awesome!" It was like you said, it was very metal at the time.
Yeah,
so.
we didn't know any better. So
That's right.
like, how many of us did not open up the Deities and Demigods book and say, I'm going to take my character, I'm going to take Thor's hammer, I'm going to kill him.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I remember some guys, even some dudes on the bus talking. They're like, "Yeah, well, what we need to do is go find the rat god from the Nuhan mythos and cut off his feet."
Okay, great. So why don't we just take this time to transition into our next segment, the treasure test.
You have opened the treasure chest. You may choose an item.
Now in treasure chest, we're going to be talking about witches' curses.
Oh, cool. So how often have you done this?
She turned me into a newt.
I got better.
Just rewatched that movie today.
Did you?
In fact. Yeah.
You didn't think there wasn't going to be a Monty Python reference in this show, did you?
No.
I mean, come on.
My oldest son loves that movie, and he wanted to show it to one of his friends who had never seen it before.
Wow.
So we had it on today, and they were laughing, and I'm like, yeah, I've seen this a few thousand times myself now.
It's always better watching it with a group.
Yes,
Oh
is.
yeah.
So let's talk about curses. What can you tell us, Tim?
So curses. Probably the most underused aspect of any witch class I've ever seen. We get lots of spells, and I always want to open it up and look to see what they have for a curse. I mean, in regular good old fashioned D&D, it's usually a third level spell. At least that's the way it was still, third edition and on, earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And usually, what do you get for a curse? Oh, bestow curse spell.
Yeah.
It's like, that's fine and everything, but there really should be more meat to it. I mean, this is evil, casting the evil eye, curses, baleful polymorphs. These are the things that we, think of when we think of witches.
Mm-hmm.
And usually you don't see a lot. I mean, even if I went through the witch book here from Mayfair, I don't even remember if there's any particular curse spells that jumped out at me.
No, maybe the only thing I saw that was traditional to witch would be the love spell or the love potion spell. That was the closest thing to a traditional witch I saw.
So I mean, even now, sure, you can. What I did I did a D20 witch book years and years ago, and for the bestow curse spell, I listed the spell there, and I'm like, this is the basic spell, and then I did about a page of things that you could use as a curse. So instead of making each one an individual spell, I made it one spell where the witch gets to choose what the curse is going to be.
Oh,
so,
okay.
Curse of Ugliness. So you get a -2 on your charisma rolls, or you get, a -2 on any ability check. You just have to stay, when you're doing the cursing, you have to say that this is what it is.
Or turned into a newt.
Turned into a newt. But you can get better.
Mm-hmm.
I think what I was thinking of is the Stephen King book / movie Thinner.
Oh,
where the gypsy curses the guy.
Oh my gosh, yes.
And I'm like, that's the way curses are supposed to work.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's not something that I think. Obviously, in a game you want to, and it's an NPC witch that they're fighting. You'd like the curse to take effect immediately. Like, curse of clumsiness. Every roll you make from this point forward is going to be a 1. which probably is more powerful than a third level spell, but maybe a -10 on all your combat rolls.
Yikes.
But then think of the other things you could do with a curse, like even lycanthropy.
Yeah.
I mean, something minor. It's like, well, not full-blown lycanthropy, because I think there's actually a 6th level spell that does that.
Yes, you have the curse of the werewolf.
That's right. So, it happens, it's something that happens more over time. It depends, I guess, on how you see what you see the characters doing after this encounter. And if you're playing a witch, you obviously don't want to send some curse up that isn't going to affect this person 6 months later or even 6 hours later. You kind of like to affect them right now while they're swinging, large hunks of metal at you.
Mm-hmm. But Thinner was like, as you mentioned, though, that book and the movie, it's kind of, I guess, realistically, when a witch bestows a curse, the curse isn't necessarily readily apparent.
Right.
It, slowly comes over time that the curse makes itself manifest. So, but I could see, in a game mechanics standpoint, yeah, you're right. It's you want the curse to have immediate effect.
I've used the, I don't know if you both are familiar with the Warlock movie that came out in the 90s.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure.
Gillian Sands.
Yeah, I've used that curse that he used on the actress when he took the bracelet from her and she kept getting older by the day.
Yeah,
I've done that to PCs, just a toy with them as well for a curse, just to see how they reacted. It was kind of an interesting one.
Yeah, the long-term ones work better if it's an NPC affecting the PCs.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a PC witch, though, you want your curses to have a little bit more immediacy to them, I think.
I can imagine a party say, they have the witch do her curse, and they say, "What'd you do to him?" "Well, in about 6 months, you'll see."
Yeah, exactly.
What do you mean 6 months? We need something to happen now. Oh, it happened now, but 6 months from now.
Mm.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that even goes beyond system too, because consider the Buffy game or Ghosts of Albion.
Mm-hmm.
If I want to do a curse and it takes that long, well, then naturally I would say, well, maybe that's actually a lower power level of the spell. And if it's something that takes place now, the power level's a lot higher. And in that game, it's a little more flexible because then that just depends on what I roll. But like I said, D&D is very combat centric.
Mm-hmm.
And I've done some fantastic role playing in D&D outside of combat where it would have been, fun to do something like that. But if I'm going to waste my 3rd level spell slot, is it going to be Bestow Curse or is it going to be Lightning Bolt? Well, if I'm sticking with the theme, and I'm very keen on sticking with the theme on the classes, I'll take Curse. I still want something that's going to affect them right away.
Right.
Yeah, you don't be waiting 6 months like Nick said.
Exactly. You're going to get thinner all the time.
His hair is going to fall out of his body.
So I guess it could be kind of neat to do the whole old age thing on a key NPC in the DM's game, and watching him freak out and having to beg for his life as a player. But why not?
Yeah, the other thing that I've actually considered doing is that a curse is actually the word any evil witch uses to describe almost any spell. So that a curse is a generic term for evil spell.
Oh, okay.
That's sort of, I think, probably bending the idea a little bit. And it sort of gets rid of the need for the 3rd level, again, Bestow Curse spell. Of course, somebody's going to look it up and say, oh, it's 2nd level, and you're going to start getting all the emails and everything. And
we love that. It's great.
Yeah, blowing all my credibility here when I could easily pull a book down and look it up.
Well, your credibility's blown. You're on the show anyway, so it just blows anybody's.
I wouldn't worry too much. Not many of the fans are 3 and up edition fans here, so
yeah,
you don't have to worry.
Exactly. I think it's the 3rd level though in 1st edition as well, and I'll readily admit that second. I say this all the time. 2nd edition is the forgotten edition of D&D.
I'd like to forget it.
Yeah, I have the 2nd edition. It didn't seem to have the charm that first edition had. And it certainly didn't have the presence that third edition did.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you have the cleric spell Bless that you can reverse into Curse, so
Right.
Yes.
you can toy
And
with
that's
that.
a first level.
Yeah, you can toy with that as a DM. So
That's true. I mean, you could do that. You could definitely do something like that. And I think that the most you get out of that's a -1.
Yeah.
On
Yeah,
something.
it's a -1 to saves and to hit, I believe.
As a
right?
DM, you can adjust it by making like a curse, and you can do like a major curse and a greater curse and things like that. If you want to make up your
Really, really great curse.
really, really bad curse. Shut up, Nick.
Yeah, the witch in the Pathfinder game
Yeah.
actually does quite a bit of that, and they call them hexes
Oh, that's a good idea.
in that. So I think, but I've got some problems with the Pathfinder witch.
Okay.
It's like the one thing that they don't do in that game is there's no covens, or you can join a coven, but it's got to have a hag in it. I'm like, well, that's fine and everything, but what if I'm a chaotic good, witch who spent most of her time in fairy?
Well, you're out of luck.
I'm out of luck, I guess. So
Too bad.
yeah, I think that's probably the other thing you don't see too much of in terms of playing. It's like, well, witches are known to be in covens. Well, we're not so much where are the rules for covens, but where's the role playing for the covens?
Right.
They do speak about in one of the traditions in the Mayfair book. I think it's the Deanna witch.
Yeah, it's under the medieval section, yes.
Yeah, they talk about covens and how that works with the officer and everything. I thought that was kind of neat.
Yeah, that's kind of cool, and that works great if there's more than one witch in your group. But if you're only playing, one character, I mean, I'll sometimes let my kids play two characters because it's just the two of them.
Mm-hmm.
But if you gotta have the right group. That's what it boils down to. But that's a cop out. That's the answer to everything, really. You gotta have the right group.
Yeah, true. Well, I guess you could do it. I mean, when I played some third edition, I remember one of my characters was just trying to become one of the Harpers. So, I mean, the DM accommodated that. So it's kind of the same thing. Secret Society, Coven,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that puts another role-playing aspect on it, too, because the Coven has its own motivations.
Oh, yeah.
So they're probably passing on information to the witch that's in the group and say, well, you have to do this and make sure the party doesn't do this.
Yeah, exactly.
Ooh. Nick with the plot and undercode.
Me, known as the lazy DM.
Yeah, the
plot schmott. No.
The lazy DM. Yeah.
Monster of the week. Here, this is what you got to kill today.
I'm not that lazy.
No. Or you could be like one of my other friends who just watches Supernatural and takes that episode and just brings it into the game the next day. So, why not?
Sure.
Just steal the episode of the show and make it into a game. Why not? So curses. There. I'm going to curse. Curse. Haha.
Yeah, there you go.
Something we don't do on this show is curse. We're good.
Yeah, damn it. We don't curse.
Nick. Okay, I guess on that note, we're going to have to
say... Watch your PG rating or something.
Yeah, we're family rated. We're a good podcast. You can listen in the office. You can listen at home with the kids. We're good for that. We try to keep it that way because, all ages should be able to play the game, and it should be accepted everywhere. It shouldn't be shunned in the corner. In the
there's enough podcasts that are obnoxious throwing F-bombs around. We don't need to be that.
That's true.
It's a gimmick. We don't need it.
Listen to Thacko's Hammer. You can hear Corey do it every other word. Well, not every other word, but close enough.
Every third word.
Yeah, every third word probably. Anyway, we love Thacko's Hammer, our sister podcast.
Yes.
Cool.
For the edition that was kind of forgotten.
Well, as Glenn...
That's right, yeah.
As Glenn calls it, the redheaded stepchild of podcasts. So... Anyway, Tim, we thank you for coming on the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. I really appreciate
great
it.
having you on, Tim. Great insight on the stuff on witches.
Why don't you give yourself a few little plugs, tell people how they can follow you, what's
well,
coming out.
Vince, I know that you're a huge fan of Holmes Basic.
Oh, yeah.
And I have a basic witch book out.
Oh, really?
So that it's somewhat Holmes inspired. It's more mold basic because that's where I got my start. Definitely not Menser basic, but I can't. I don't want to say that it's Labyrinth Lord or Basic Fantasy compatible, because I never really applied for the compatibility license, and I wanted it more generically compatible with quote unquote basic era games.
Right, gotcha.
But that's if you go to Drive Through RPG, it's called The Witch.
Okay.
And it's it's got my name, or you can search for me on there. You can find The Witch. You can find Ghosts of Albion. I'm not listed with the Eden. I'm not listed with the Buffy games because I think maybe Slayer's Handbook, because it just says I think the authors on there are listed as Eden Studios.
Yeah, they are.
But yeah, go there. It's the PDF's $5, and it's 36 levels of witch playing goodness, where I probably violate everything I said I don't like about the witch in there. But I've got that, and I think I've got like 300 spells.
Oh wow! All right.
In it too, and it's basically stuff that I've been picking at over the years. Like I said, I've been writing since forever, and I just hold on to it onto my hard drive, and every so often I'll pull it out and polish it up and stick it up there. So that's out now. That came out in October, and I'm pretty pleased with it. So you can go find that. I've got another one coming out called Eldritch Witchery, which is very much inspired by the old OD&D Eldritch Wizardry rules.
Oh, okay, cool.
And that's actually gonna be for the Spellcraft and Swordplay game. That's sort of the what if version of OD&D. If OD&D had stuck with the original version of their combat, instead of using the D20, they use the 2D6. So it's a 2D6 version of D&D.
Oh,
but it's got some neat twists on it, and I kind of dig the game. And it's if you like an old school game that's rolls pretty fast, and you only want, and it only uses two 6-sideds instead of a D20, so it's a little bit different. Got a bit of a different vibe to it that I kind of like. So I got that coming out. I've got some other stuff coming out too from Battlefield Press. Right, I'm doing another. I've got a couple more Victorian era things coming out.
Oh yeah, well Mike from Save or Die would probably like to talk to you. He loves that stuff too.
Got a quick question for you. How you mentioned Victoria era, which seemed like a pretty much fan of Cthulhu by Gaslight. What do you think of that?
I love Cthulhu by Gaslight. I ran out when my second edition copy was falling apart, terrible shape. I was really irritated that there was no legal PDF out there for me to get. So as soon as third edition came out, I'd already pre-ordered it. I ran to my local game store, and I'll put a plug in for them, Games Plus and Mount Prospect. Mm-hmm. If you're in the Chicago area, you know it. Ran there, picked it up, got on drive-thru, got the PDF as well, because that's how much I love it. Even if I never play it, and I just love using all the material for Ghosts of Albion.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just think it's fantastic.
That was one of the source books when it first came out I did not get. First it didn't seem to have an appeal to me, but I guess they're, like yourself, there's a lot of people that say, what, it's a really, really cool source book.
It is.
For, Victorian era England, British Empire role-playing with Cthulhu mythos. So, I might have to pick up the new edition.
It's worth it. I mean, it's the nice thing about it is it's got some nice maps. It's got some how much different products cost at the time. Mm-hmm. So I thought that was pretty cool.
How about if they want to follow you, Tim, or they want to read your blog? Where can
my blog's The Other Side, and you can find me at what is my address? I believe it's I should know this stuff by now.
Yeah, cool.
It's Tim Brannan, so TIMBRANNN.blogspot.com. Mm-hmm. And I've got a link up for my books there, so you can go find that. Or and I'm constantly writing stuff and throwing stuff up. So I've got a few free things. I've got a basic. I've actually got a basic vampire class that I give away for free. So if you want to play a vampire in basic rules, because it's back when classes and races were the same thing. Mm-hmm. I've got you can start off as a first level vampire, which is almost nothing, and then work your way all the way up to a vampire lord of 14th level.
Cool.
So
wow.
So that's for free, and you can get that. And I've got character sheets, and I think I've got a couple Ghosts of Albion adventures up there too. Some Swords and Wizardry stuff, which is kind of neat. I've been getting into some Castles and Crusades, so I'm probably going to be doing some stuff with that coming up soon.
Cool.
So yeah, or just Google my name. You'll probably find me. I'm kind of all over the place.
And how about, are you on Twitter, Facebook? Do you do any of those things?
I'm on Facebook. So just search for my name, Tim Brannan. And I wasn't thinking when I did my Twitter, that one's actually Tim S. Brannan. So it's just the same, Brannan. And I'm on Twitter. I'm not very active on Twitter. I'll be honest with you, because I haven't figured out. I keep thinking that, I post it to my blog, and then I post a link on Facebook, and then if I post a link on Twitter, people are going to start thinking that I have nothing better to do than talk about myself all day. But I'm on Twitter as well, and I'll retweet some things. I follow a few people that I think are pretty interesting on there. Gail Simone always has something pretty clever to say, the comic book writer, and I'm on Facebook as well. So you can find me there.
You have a lot of stuff for the Buffy game on here as well. I'm looking at your website.
Yeah.
Anybody wants to get into that, great game to play. It's fun, quick and easy.
I played a lot of Buffy, and I played a lot of Witchcraft back in the early part of 2000. So a lot of the things I write for the Witch, I'm actually even pulling from sort of that.
Oh, okay.
Cool.
All right, so I guess we're going to have to say goodbye, and we thanked him again. And
yes, don't get turned into a newt.
That's right. Get better.
And as always, if you have a chance to come back, we'd appreciate you stopping by again. So
great, I'd love to.
Excellent. So I guess we'll say this is Vince for Nick saying keep it original, keep it old school. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone.
Night, thanks so much.
Roll for initiative.